Chapter 14, page 215. Human beings in their natural state are unpredictable, erratic, and unhappy. It is only once their animal instincts are controlled that they can be responsible, dependable, and content. I once saw a news report about a brown bear that had accidentally been punctured by its trainer at the Portland Circus during routine training. I was really young, but I'll never forget the way the bear looked, an enormous dark blob tearing around its circle with a ridiculous red paper hat still flopping crazily from its head, ripping into whatever it could get its jaws around, paper streamers, folding chairs, balloons, its trainer too. The bear mauled him and turned his face into hamburger meat. The worst part that I've never forgotten was its panicked roaring, a horrible, continuous, enraged bellow that somehow sounded human. That's what I remember as the raiders start flooding the house, pouring in through the shattered door, battering on the windows. That's what I think of as the music cuts off suddenly, and instead the air is full of barking and screaming and shattering glass, as hot hands push me from the front and from the side, and I catch an elbow under my chin and another one in my ribs. I remember the bear. Somehow I've surged forward in the panicked crowd that is flowing and scrabbling toward the back of the house. Behind me I hear the dogs snapping, their jaws and regulators swinging heavy clubs. People are screaming, so many people it sounds like a single voice. A girl falls behind me, stumbling forward and reaching for me as one of the regulators' batons catches her on the back of the head with a sickening crack. I feel her fingers tighten momentarily on the cotton of my shirt, and I shake her off and keep running, pushing, squeezing forward. I have no time to be sorry and no time to be scared. I have no time to do anything but move, push, go. Can't think of anything but escape, escape, escape. The strange thing is that for a minute in the middle of all that noise and confusion, I see things super clearly, in slow motion, like I'm watching a film from a distance. I see a guard dog make a leap for a guy to my left. I see his knees buckle as he topples forward with the barest, tiniest noise, like a breath or a sigh, a crescent of blood splattering up from his neck, where the dog's teeth tear into him. A girl with flashing blonde hair goes down under the raiders' clubs, and as I see the arc of hair, for a second my heart goes totally still, and I think I've died. I think it's all over. Then she twists her head my way, shouting, as the regulators get her with pepper spray, and I see that she isn't Hannah, and relief rushes through me. A wave. More snapshots. A movie. Only a movie. Not happening. Never could really happen. A boy and a girl fighting to make it into one of the side rooms, maybe thinking there's an exit that way. The door is too small for both of them to enter at once. He is wearing a blue shirt that reads Portland Naval Conservatory, and she has long red hair bright as a flame. Only 5 minutes ago they were talking and laughing together, standing so close that if one of them had even tipped forward accidentally, they might have kissed. Now they wrestle, but she is too small. She locks her teeth on his arm like a dog, like a wild thing. He roars, rages, grabs her by the shoulders, and slams her back against the wall out of the way. She stumbles, falls, slipping, trying to stand up. One of the raiders, an enormous man with the reddest face I've ever seen, reaches down, knots his fingers around her ponytail, and hauls her to her feet. Naval Conservatory doesn't get away either. 2 raiders follow him, and as I run, I hear a thud of their clubs, the mangled sound of screaming. Animals, I think. We're animals. People are shoving, pulling, using one another as shields as the raiders keep gaining, surging forward, swinging at us, dogs at our heels, batons whirling so close to my head I can feel the air whooshing on my neck as the wind whirls, twirls near the back of my skull. I think of searing pain. I think of red. The crowd is thinning around me as the raiders advance. One by one, people are screaming next to me. Crack! And dropping, getting wrestled to the ground by 3, 4, 5 dogs. Screaming, screaming. Everyone is screaming. Somehow I've managed to avoid being caught, and I'm still rocketing through the narrow, creaking hallways, passing a blur of rooms, a blur of people and raiders, more lights, more shattered windows, the sound of engines. They've got the place surrounded. And then the open back door rises up in front of me, and beyond it, dark trees, the cool and whispering woods behind the house. If I can make it outside, if I can hide from the lights for long enough. I hear a dog barking behind me, and behind that, a raider's pounding footsteps, gaining, a sharp voice yelling, "Stop!" And suddenly I realize I'm alone in the hallway. 15 more steps, then 10. If I can make it into the darkness. 5 feet from the door, and sudden shooting pain rips through my leg. The dog has got its jaws around my calf, and I turn, and that's when I see him. The regulator with the massive red face, eyes glittering, smiling. Oh, God, he's smiling. He actually enjoys this. Club raised, ready to swing. I close my eyes, think of pain as big as the ocean, think of a blood-red sea. Think of my mother. Then I'm being jerked to the side, and I hear a crack and a yelp, and the regulator saying, "Shit!" The fire in my legs stops, and the weight of the dog falls off, and there's an arm around my waist and a voice in my ear. A voice so familiar in that moment, it's like I've been waiting for it all along. Like I've been hearing it forever in my dreams, breathing out, "This way." Alex keeps one arm around my waist, half carrying me. We're in a different hallway now, this one smaller and totally empty. Every time I put weight on my right leg, the pain flares up again, searing all the way to my head. The raider is still behind us and pissed. Alex must have pulled me to safety at just the right second, so the raider cracked down on his dog instead of my skull. And I know I must be slowing Alex down, but he doesn't let me go. Not for a second. "In here," he says, and then we're ducking into another room. We must be in part of the house that wasn't being used for the party. This room is pitch black, although Alex doesn't slow down at all, just keeps going through the dark. I let the pressure of his fingertips guide me. Left, right, left, right. It smells like mold in here, and something else. Fresh paint, almost, and something smoky, like someone's been cooking in here. But that's impossible. These houses have been empty for years. Behind us, the raider is struggling in the dark. He bumps up against something and curses. A second later, something crashes to the ground. Glass shatters, more cursing. From the sound of his voice, I can tell he's falling behind. "Up," Alex whispers. So quiet and so close, it's like I've only imagined it. And just like that, he's lifting me, and I realize I'm going out a window. Feel the rough wood of the windowsill grate against my back, land on my good foot in the soft, damp grass outside. A second later, Alex follows soundlessly, materializing beside me in the dark. Though the air is hot, a breeze is picked up, and it sweeps across my skin, and I could cry for gratitude and relief. But we're not safe yet, far from it. The darkness is mobile, twisting, alive with paths of light. Flashlights cut through the woods to our right and our left, and in their glare I see fleeing figures, lit up like ghosts, frozen for a moment in the beams. The screams continue, some only a few feet away, some so distant and forlorn you could make them for something else. For owls, maybe, hooting peacefully in the trees. Then Alex has taken my hand and we're running again. Every step on my right foot is a fire, a blade. I bite inside of my cheeks to keep from crying out and taste blood. Chaos, scenes from hill, floodlights from the road, shadows falling, bones cracking, voices shattering apart, dissolving into silence. "In here." I do what he says without hesitating. A tiny wooden shed has appeared miraculously in the dark. It's falling apart and so overgrown with moss and climbing vines that even from a distance only a few feet, it appeared to be a tangle of bushes and trees. I have to stoop to get inside, and when I do, the smell of animal urine and wet dog is so strong I almost gag. Alex comes in behind me and shuts the door. I hear a rustling and see him kneeling, stuffing a blanket in the gap between the door and the ground. The blanket must be the source of the smell. It absolutely reeks. "God," I whisper. It's the first thing I've said to him, cupping my hand over my mouth and nose. "This way the dogs won't pick up the scent," he whispers back matter-of-factly. I've never met someone so calm in my life. I think fleetingly that maybe the stories I heard when I was little were true. Maybe invalids really are monsters, freaks. Then I feel ashamed. He just saved my life. He saved my life from the raiders. From the people who are supposed to protect us and keep us safe. From the people who are supposed to keep us safe from the people like Alex. Nothing makes sense anymore. My head is spinning and I feel dizzy. I stumble, bumping up against the wall behind me, and Alex reaches up to steady me. "Sit down," he says, in that same commanding voice he has been using all along. It's comforting to listen to his low, forceful directives to let myself go. I lower myself to the ground. The floor is damp and rough underneath me. The moon must have broken through the clouds, gaps in the walls, and roof let in little spots of silvery light. I can just make out some of the shelves beyond Alex's head, a set of cans, paint maybe, piled in the corner. Now that Alex and I are both sitting, there's hardly any room left to maneuver. The whole structure is only a few feet wide. "I'm going to take a look at your leg, okay?" He's still whispering. I nod okay. Even when I'm sitting down, the dizziness doesn't subside. He sits up on his knees and draws my leg into his lap. It's not until he begins rolling up my pant leg that I feel how wet the fabric is against my skin. I must be bleeding. I bite my lip and press my back up hard against the wall, expecting it to hurt, but the feeling of his hands against my skin, cool and strong, somehow dampens everything, sliding across the pane like an eclipse blotting the moon dark. Once he has my pants rolled up to the knee, he tilts me gently so he can see the back of my calf. I lean one elbow on the floor, feeling the room sway. I must be bleeding a lot. He exhales sharply, a quick sound between his teeth. "Is it bad?" I say, too afraid to look. "Hold still," he says, and I know that it is bad, but he won't tell me so, and in that moment I'm so flooded with gratitude for him and hatred for the people outside, hunters, primitives with their sharp teeth and heavy sticks. The air goes out of me and I have to struggle to breathe. Alex reaches into a corner of the shed without removing my leg from his lap. He fiddles with a box of some kind and metal latches creak open. A second later, he's hovering over my leg with a bottle. "This is going to burn for a second," he says. Liquid splatters my skin, and the astringent smell of alcohol makes my nostrils flare. Flames lick up against my leg, and I nearly scream. Alex reaches out a hand, and without thinking, I take it and squeeze. "What is that?" I force out through gritted teeth. "Rubbing alcohol," he says, "prevents infection." "How did you know it was here?" I ask, but he doesn't answer. He draws his hand away from mine, and I realize I've been grabbing onto him hard, but I don't have the energy to be embarrassed or afraid. The room seems to be pulsing, the half-darkness growing fuzzier. "Shit," Alex mutters, "you're really bleeding." "It doesn't hurt that much," I whisper, which is a lie, but he's so calm, so together, it makes me want to act brave too. Everything has taken on a strange, distant quality. The sounds of running and shooting outside get warped and weird like they're being filtered through water, and Alex looks miles away. I start to think I might be dreaming or about to pass out. And then I decide I'm definitely dreaming because as I'm watching, Alex starts peeling off his shirt over his head. "What are you doing?" I almost scream. Alex finishes shaking loose the shirt and begins tearing the fabric into long strips, shooting a nervous glance at the door and pausing to listen every time the clothes go rip. I've never in my whole life, seen a guy without a shirt on, except for really little kids or from a distance on the beach when I've been too afraid to look for fear of getting in trouble. Now, I can't stop staring. The moonlight just touches his shoulder blades so they glow slightly like wingtips, like pictures of angels I've seen in textbooks. He's thin but muscular, too. When he moves, I can make out the lines of his arms and chest so strangely, incredibly, beautifully different from a girl's. A body that makes me think of running and being outside, of warmth and sweating. His heat starts beating through me, a thrumming feeling like 1,000 tiny birds have been released in my chest. I'm not sure if it's from the bleeding, but the room feels like it's spinning so fast we're in danger of flying out of it, both of us getting thrown out into the night. Before, Alex seemed far away. Now the room is full of him. He's so close I can't breathe, can't move, or speak, or think. Every time he brushes me with his fingers, time seems to teeter for a second, like it's in danger of dissolving. The whole world is dissolving, I decide, except for us. Us. Hey. He reaches out and touches my shoulder just for a second, but in that second my body shrinks down to that single point of pressure under his hand and glows with warmth. I've never felt like this so calm and peaceful. Maybe I'm dying. The idea doesn't really upset me for some reason. In fact, it seems kind of funny. "You okay?" "Fine." I start to giggle softly. "You're naked." "What?" Even in the dark, I can tell he's squinting at me. I've never seen a boy like that, with no shirt on. Not up close. He begins wrapping the shredded t-shirt around my leg, carefully tying it tight. "That dog got you good," he says, "but this should stop the bleeding." The phrase "stop the bleeding" sounds so clinical and scary, it snaps me awake and helps me to focus. Alex finishes tying off the makeshift bandage. Now the searing pain in my leg has been replaced by a dull, throbbing pressure. Alex lifts my leg carefully out of his lap and rests it on the ground. "Okay," he says, and I nod. Then he scoots around next to me, leaning against the wall like I am, so we're sitting side by side, arms just touching at the elbows. I can feel the heat coming off his bare skin, and it makes me feel hot. I close my eyes and try not to think about how close we are or what it would feel like to run my hands over his shoulders and chest. Outside, the sounds of the raid grow more and more distant, the screams fewer, the voices fainter. The raiders must be passing on. I say a silent prayer that Hannah managed to escape. The possibility that she didn't is too terrible to contemplate. Still, Alex and I don't move. I'm so tired I feel like I could sleep forever. Home seems impossibly, incomprehensibly far away, and I don't see how I'll ever make it back. Alex starts speaking all at once, his voice a low, urgent rush. "Listen, Lena, what happened at the beach, I'm really sorry. I should have told you sooner, but I didn't want to frighten you away." "You don't have to explain," I say. "But I want to explain. I want you to know that I didn't mean to." "Listen," I cut him off. "I'm not going to tell anyone, okay? I'm not going to get you in trouble or anything." He pauses. I feel him turn to look at me, but I keep my eyes fixed on the darkness in front of us. I don't care about that, he says lower. Another pause, and then, I just don't want you to hate me. Again, the room seems to be shrinking, closing in around us. I can feel his eyes on me like the hot pressure of touch, but I'm too afraid to look at him. I'm afraid that if I do, I'll lose myself in his eyes, forget all the things I'm supposed to say. Outside, the woods have fallen silent. The raiders must have left. After a second, the crickets began singing all at once, warbling throatily, a great swelling of sound. Why do you care? I say, barely a whisper. I told you, he whispers back. I can feel his breath just tickling the space behind my ear, making the hair prick up on my neck. I like you. You don't know me, I say quickly. I want to, though. The room is spinning more and more quickly. I press up more firmly against the wall, trying to steady myself against the feeling of dizzying movement. It's impossible. He has an answer for everything. It's too quick. It must be a trick. I press my palms against the damp floor, taking comfort in the solidity of the rough wood. Why me? I don't mean to ask it, but the words slide out. I'm nobody, I want to say. I'm nobody special, but the words dry up in my mouth. This is what I imagine it feels like to climb the top of a mountain where the air is so thin you can inhale and inhale and inhale and still feel like you can't take a breath. Alex doesn't answer, and I realize he doesn't have an answer, just like I suspected. There's no reason for it at all. He's picked me at random, as a joke, or because he knew I'd be too scared to tell on him. But then he starts speaking. His story is so rapid and fluid you can tell he has thought about it a lot. The kind of story you tell over and over to yourself until the edges get all smoothed over. I was born in the wilds. My mother died right afterward. My father's dead. He never knew he had a son. I lived there for the first part of my life, just kind of bouncing around. He hesitates slightly, and I can hear the grimace in his voice. Invalids took care of me together, like a community thing. Outside, the crickets pause temporarily in their song. For a second, it's like nothing bad has happened, like nothing has happened tonight out of the ordinary at all. Just another hot and lazy summer night, waiting for morning to peel it back. Pain knifes through me in that moment, but it has nothing to do with my leg. It strikes me how small everything is. Our whole world, everything with meaning, our stores and our raids and our jobs and our lives even. Meanwhile, the world just goes on the same as always, night cycling into day and back into night, an endless circle. Seasons shifting and reforming like a monster shaking off its skin and growing it again. Alex keeps talking. I came to Portland when I was 10 to join up with the resistance here. I won't tell you how. It was complicated. I got an ID number, I got a new last name, a new home address. There are more of us than you think. Invalids and sympathizers too, more of us than anybody knows. We have people in the police force and all the municipal departments. We have people in the labs even. Goosebumps pop up all over my arms when he says this. My point is that it's possible to get in and out. Difficult, but possible. I moved in with 2 strangers, sympathizers, both of them, and was told to call them my aunt and uncle. He shrugs ever so slightly next to me. I didn't care. I'd never known my real parents, and I'd been raised by dozens of different aunts and uncles. It didn't make a difference to me. His voice has gotten super quiet, and he seems almost to have forgotten that I'm here. I'm not exactly sure where his story is going, but I hold my breath, afraid that if I even so much as exhale, he'll stop speaking entirely. I hated it here. I hated it here so much you can't even imagine. All the buildings and the people looking so dazed, and the smells and the closeness of everything, and the rules. Rules everywhere you turned. Rules and walls. Rules and walls. I wasn't used to it. I felt like I was in a cage. We are in a cage. A bordered cage. A little shock pulses through me. In all the 17 years and 11 months of my life, I have never, not once, thought of it that way. I've been so used to thinking of what the borders are keeping out that I haven't considered that they're also pinning us in. Now I see it through Alex's eyes, see what it must have been like for him. At first, I was angry. I used to light things on fire. Paper, handbooks, school primers, it made me feel better somehow. He laughed softly. I even burned my copy of the Book of Shh. Another shock pulses through me. Defacing or destroying the Book of Shh is sacrilege. I used to walk along the borders for hours every day. Sometimes I cried. He squirms next to me and I can tell he's embarrassed. It's the first sign he's given me in a while that he knows I'm still there, that he's talking to me, and the urge to reach out and grab his hand, to squeeze him or give him some kind of reassurance is almost overwhelming. But I keep my hands glued to the floor. After a while, though, I would just walk. I liked to watch the birds. They would lift off from our side and soar over into the wilds as easily as anything. Back and forth, lifting and curling through the air. I could watch them for hours at a time. Free. They were totally free. I thought that nothing and nobody was free in Portland, but I was wrong. There were always the birds. He falls silent for a while, and I think maybe he's done with his story. I wonder if he's forgotten about my original question, why me? But I'm too embarrassed to remind him, so I just sit there and imagine him standing at the border motionless, watching the birds swoop above his head. It calms me down. After what seems like forever, he starts talking again, this time in a voice so quiet I have to shift nearer to him just to hear. The first time I saw you at the Governor, I hadn't been to watch the birds at the border in years. But that's what you reminded me of. You were jumping up and you were yelling something, and your hair was coming loose from your ponytail, and you were so fast. He shakes his head. Just like a flash, you were gone. Exactly like a bird. I don't know how. I hadn't intended to move and hadn't noticed moving, but somehow we've ended up face to face in the dark, only inches apart. Everyone is asleep. They've been asleep for years. You seemed awake. Alex is whispering low. He closes his eyes, opens them again. I'm tired of sleeping. My insides are lifting and fluttering like they've done what he has said and been transformed into swooping, soaring birds. The rest of my body seems to be floating away on massive currents of warmth as though hot wind is pushing through me, breaking me apart, turning me to air. This is wrong, a voice says inside of me, but it isn't my voice. It's someone else's, some composite of my aunt and Rachel and all my teachers and the pinchy evaluator who asked most of the questions the second time around. Out loud I speak, no, even though another word is rising and lifting inside of me, bubbling up like fresh water sprung from the earth. Yes, yes, yes. Why? He's barely whispering. His hands find my face. His fingertips barely skim my forehead, the top of my ears, the hollows of my cheeks. Everywhere he touches is fire. My whole body is burning up.